No more, no more, no more forever. In war or peace shall return MacCrimmon. No more, no more, no more forever shall love or gold bring back MacCrimmon. Hi there. That was the refrain from MacCrimmon's Lament. I'll sing the whole song in a moment, but first, as long as Maggie doesn't create too many distractions, I'll sing the whole song, but first I want to share some information about laments, keening, and coffin roads. A lament is just as you'd expect, a song lamenting the death of a person, but it's part of a much richer tradition and set of rituals that the Scots followed when a person died. At death, the deceased bodies was washed and laid in an open coffin on a table or on chairs in the family's house. There might be a wake with much drinking and crying and laughter and to celebrate the dead person. And it might last a day or two or three, depending on how many people needed to visit with the body. The coffin would then be closed and needed to be borne to the cemetery for burial. Now, the rituals concerning this trip were important and tied to some very old pagan and Christian beliefs. But you can imagine that before Christianity provided its own sort of set of rules for how we deal with the dead, there were many worries, because there were little explanation for certain things, there were many worries about the spirit of the dead person finding rest and ensuring that they didn't haunt anyone or any place. The body left the house through the back door, or even sometimes a hole created for the purpose of removing the body. The body was carried out feet first. You know the phrase, they'll have to carry me out of here feet first, implying when I'm dead. So you know where that came from now. And the idea was that feet first meant that the spirit would leave the house as though they were walking to the cemetery, not head first. If the body was removed via the front door or the threshold, there was always the chance that this would encourage the spirit of the dead person to return, to come back in the entrance to their house. Pallbearers would carry the coffin to the cemetery via a coffin road. This was a dedicated path, not the most direct route as would be a walking path between villages or a cattle drover's path driving cattle to market. Spirits not yet at rest, apparently, preferred to move in straight lines, and they could not cross water. So the coffin road would be a curving path that crossed streams or a stream to confuse the spirit or thwart them from returning home. The path would move from east to west, that is actually east to west in my house right now, which is the path of the sun and the favored direction for the dead one's feet to face. The trip on the coffin road might take hours, or it could take several days. Burying the coffin was an important responsibility, and to show respect for the corpse and likely ensure that you also would not be haunted, you needed to take your turn at the coffin. The pallbearers would need to rest and refresh themselves periodically. I guess there was a lot of whiskey that was consumed on these trips. And cairns, which are kind of a modern thing, but cairns were built along the way to mark a resting place or to rest the coffin on if there was not a table stone, since it was considered bad luck to rest the coffin on the ground. Once at the cemetery, getting the body in the ground was important, and if there was another funeral at the same time, another group of people burying a coffin in, quite a bit of effort was made to get your loved one into the ground first. Why? Because it was believed that the spirit of the dead person must stand guard at the cemetery gate and could only be relieved of this duty when the next body was buried, and then that spirit would take over the watch, the gate watch. If you didn't want your dead one's spirit to linger at the gate any longer than necessary, getting them into the ground first was a big deal, and competitive behavior was known to occur between burial parties. Blocking, preventing people from entering the gate, all sorts of very odd behavior for people who were trying to be respectful of the dead, but they were trying to respect their dead. All in all, I hope you can kind of appreciate that this process to aid the dead person to their final rest was also an important part of the grieving process. The days involved were focused in a way that's not known to us these days in the modern world. The rituals would have provided structure in the first days after the loss of a friend or family member. And you would have the sense of the deceased being cared for, which kind of also offers a kind of support to the survivors because they're all part of this party, this process, this ritual. Circling back to the form of song called a lament, I thought you probably wondered where we were going to get here eventually. Also accompanying the funeral group would be professional keeners. Typically, they were women who had suffered grief at the loss of a loved one already, and so they were able to channel that grief into their laments. Keening is wailing, and often in songs or stories, you'll hear reference to banshees, which are fairy women who keen when someone has died, or sometimes they are foretelling the death of someone. So banshees are scary business. The lament mostly consisted of the sentiment that the person was gone, never to return. It would mention their good traits, and feelings of alas or oh no were very much a part of the verbiage that was used. While we know of many laments, there is very little recording of keening. It was deemed too private, too personal to record or document. But I did find a recording of that's unofficial and unqualified recording of keening, and I'll link to that in the comments. It's a YouTube video you might find interesting. The Bonnie Odell of Murray is a lament, and I would also classify the College Boy as a lament, and I will sing that in a later podcast for you since it's one of my favorites. And this is interesting. MacCrimmon's Lament was written by Donald Ban MacCrimmon for himself. He had a premonition of his death a year before the Rout of Moy in 1746. That was the very tail end skirmish of the Battle of Culloden, 1745. I said hopefully 1746. Oddly, he was on the wrong side for a Scot. He was the only one killed in the Rout of Moy, which was an attempt by the Hanoverians to capture Bonnie Prince Charlie. The song is a variant of a 19th century translation from the Gaelic. The MacCrimmons were hereditary pipers of the MacLeods of Skye and considered the most famous piping family in the world. There's some excellent information on mainly Norfolk, a website worth checking out if you are interested in traditional music of the British Isles. So here's MacCrimmon's Lament. There are several versions, and mine is mostly from the singing of Jean Redpath. A couple of vocabulary notes. The Coolin is a group of jagged mountains on Skye. The black and the red Coolin are different compositions. And Blueen are blue eyes. Round Coolin's peak, the mist is sailing, the banshee croons her note of wailing. My own Blueen with sorrow are streaming for him that will never return. MacCrimmon, no more, no more, no more forever. In war or peace shall return MacCrimmon. No more, no more, no more forever shall love or gold bring back MacCrimmon. The breeze on the braes is mournfully moaning. The and my blueing with sorrow are streaming for him that will never return, MacCrimmon's. No more, no more, no more forever, in war or peace shall return, MacCrimmon. No more, no more, no more forever shall love or gold bring back, MacCrimmon. That's MacCrimmon's Lament. I hope you found this interesting, all the stuff about coffin roads and death and laments. I think there is much we could take back from some of these traditions to help us in modern times cope with grief than the brief and even hurried funerals that we have now. Please feel free to post this podcast, which is not monetized, but made with love of this music and a desire to share something meaningful. At least it's meaningful to me. Press on with hope, my friends. Check the comments area for links to recordings and to mainly Norfolk. Thanks.